Questions for reflection. The Lord spoke through his servant Moses to his people Israel. Be holy as I am holy. Then he gave his people a way of life to live, which would reveal the holiness of God to all the nations. We were created in the image of God, and at the core of the truth which that phrase reveals is our capacity for freedom. The real question is, how are we using our freedom? The real problem is sin. It has fractured our freedom, and we too often do not choose to live the way of the Lord. In his encyclical letter on faith and reason, Fides et Ratio, St. John Paul II wrote these words, and I quote, "It is not just that freedom is part of the act of faith, it is absolutely required. Indeed, it is faith that allows individuals to give consummate expression to their own freedom. Put differently, freedom is not realized in decisions made against God." And the Pope continued, "For how could it be an exercise of true freedom to refuse to be open to the very reality which enables our self-realization? Men and women can accomplish no more important act in their lives than the act of faith. It is here that freedom reaches the certainty of truth and chooses to live in that truth." That's paragraph 13. All of this invites us to pause and reflect upon our own lives and our own choices. This 40-day season of repentance and conversion called Lent presents us with an opportunity to turn away from sin and turn toward the Lord. Have we offered the Lord our freedom? The psalmist David regularly sang psalms of praise to the Lord, thanking him for his law, the precepts which lead us to holiness and happiness. So in our response to today's readings, we are invited to sing along with him. The precepts of Yahweh are honest, joy for the heart. The commandment of Yahweh is pure, light for the eyes. How do we view the Lord's precepts, his commandments? Do we see them as an imposition or an invitation? The gospel of the day is sobering and challenging. Jesus speaks to us of the final judgment and how our own lives will be evaluated. His identification with the poor in all their manifestations is obvious. Jesus comes to us and the poor and the needy in our daily lives. How we treat them reveals the depth and sincerity of our love for God. This is a long-standing teaching of the Church, precisely because it is a clear teaching of Jesus himself. It cannot and must not be minimized or marginalized by trying to enclose it in any political box, no matter what the label. If you desire to read more about this tenet of Catholic social doctrine and biblical teaching, you can find helpful treatment throughout the sections on social concerns in the Catholic Catechism, and the immense sources cited within the paragraphs and the footnotes within that section. Let me share a few. 2444. The Church's love for the poor is a part of her constant tradition. This love is inspired by the gospel of the Beatitudes, of the poverty of Jesus, and of his concern for the poor. Love for the poor is even one of the motives for the duty of working so as to be able to give to those in need, citing Ephesians 4. It extends not only to material poverty, but also to the many forms of cultural and religious poverty. End quote. This morning, on this Monday of the first full week of Lent, we heard this passage from the Gospel at St. Matthew at Holy Mass. Listen again to these stunning words of Jesus. I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me. I was naked, and you gave me clothing. I was sick, and you took care of me. I was in prison, and you visited me. How well I understand the question posed by his stunned disciples. Lord, when did we see you hungry or thirsty or a stranger or naked or ill or in prison and not minister to your needs? It was an extraordinary statement. However, as I've aged, I've come to see the many faces of poverty, and I'm learning to recognize the face of Jesus as he is revealed in them all. Have you ever considered the significance of the fact that the same Jesus who promised to be with us always also told us that the poor would be with us always? That is because these are connected. Indeed, in a sense, they are one and the same, in a way that is revealed with the eyes of living faith. The poor you will always have with you, but you will always not have me. Matthew 26. And behold, I am with you always until the end of the age. Matthew 28:20. The face of Jesus is found in the face of the poor, for those with eyes to see. The word of Jesus is spoken through the poor, for those who cultivate the ears to hear. The cry of Jesus is heard in the cry of the poor, at least for those who stop to listen. That's the deeper meaning behind this sobering scene recounting the Last Judgment, recorded by the evangelist Matthew in the 25th chapter of his gospel. How do we treat the poor?